What's going on? Welcome back to the channel. Today we're going to talk to you about OSCR Health. It's been a while since I've done a video on it, so I want to go over some of the data points, break it down on what's been really influencing it, and go over everything else you need to know. But first, make sure to hit that thumbs up, and with that, let's get right to it. So OSCR did go up 5.71% on Friday. Over the last 5 days alone, it is up 21.54%. So definitely gaining some very good traction. And ultimately, even if we pop over here for a second, you see from the market position overview that there is virtually no walls of selling, just a lot of willing buyers. So at the end of the day, a very similar type of scenario to June, when it broke higher from around $14, $15 to a high of around $23. So that same type of scenario might potentially play out, despite the negativity from analysts. So I'll go over that later in the video. But ultimately, at the end of the day, a couple different attributing factors why OSCR Health has been moving higher is optimism associated to rate cuts. So this has been very good for growth stocks, really helping the sector as well. So for the upcoming September 17th meeting, there is a 11% likelihood of a 50 basis point cut, and then a 89% likelihood of a 25. So at the end of the day, very good for growth stocks, for the economy and everyone else. And then aside from that though, you've seen a notable increase in hedge funds buying into actual AI plays. So I think ultimately people look at OSCR Health and see a discounted stock. And that again could be up for debate, because popping over here for a second, analysts still don't really like it. So since my last video, which was I think in beginning of August, there's been a handful of ratings, all negative. So you have Wells Fargo, $10 sell. Analyst has a 44% success rating, so not all that great. You also have a $13 hold, Piper Sandler, Jessica, who has a 42% success rating, $11 sell, Barclays, Andrew, who has a 48% success rating, and then $11 sell, Bank of America. Analyst has a 57% success rating. So as a consensus, $11.86 is that price target, representing a 38 or 39% downside. So analysts still hate it. But despite that though, clearly hedge funds see otherwise. And the reason why you can kind of tell that hedge funds are buying is quickly popping back over here, looking at the market flow, is that whenever you see a discrepancy from the inflow and outflow, and even if the underlying asset did go higher, and if there is more outflow than in, then that does mean that hedge funds were buying, primarily on the dark pool. So this is why I always, for those of you that are new to the channel, I always like to bring up where volume comes from, whether it be on the secondary market or dark pool. But dark pool was very popular on Friday, and even the days leading to that. So at the end of the day, I think OSCR Health definitely is on the verge of a very nice breakout. As far as true updates from the company itself, they did participate recently in a conference, so the Wells Fargo Healthcare Conference, and so this was done on September the 3rd. Aside from that, there was a couple Form 4s that did come out right over here, as you can kind of see. So on September the 4th, after hours, a lot of selling, but it is all transaction code F right over here, so it is selling for tax purposes. So I'm not really too worried whenever I see that. So this one's transaction code F, 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 and then F. So at the end of the day, I'm not too worried about this in my opinion. But aside from that though, I think the next big catalyst potentially will be their actual earnings. And so that's not anytime soon, but still forward looking. That is what Wall Street is really going to be looking at, whether they do reaffirm their actual guidance, which they did as well last earnings, or not. So I think overall, OSCR is going to be really pushing higher, and maybe even by their earnings be at that $24, $25 range. But aside from that, one thing that did always influence it, at least while I was covering it, was shorts. So at the time of doing this video, 21.97% of the free float is being shorted, works out to be 46.21 million shares overall are being shorted. So since Since May, roughly the short interest was 8%. At its peak, which was July the 29th, it was at 36.27%. So shorts during that time frame massively doubled down. I think there was some weird orchestrated attempt, and which does match with a lot of negative analyst ratings. So I think any disruptive company such as Oscar Health always gets hate. And I cover a couple other stocks that is disruptors in a old business that is using AI to really push higher. And somehow Wall Street just massively hates it. But even on Friday, shorts did return 1.05 million shares, 46 million shares overall, like I said, being shorted. DTC 1.84 days. So that does signal that shorts are rather overextended, because that does factor in the average volume for Oscar Health in comparison to the number of shares being shorted. So at the end of the day, I don't see this being a squeeze play, but I feel over the next quarter, shorts will return, bringing it back down to most likely that 14% range. So that should be a pretty good thing. Regarding options, so we did have 11 million in calls on Friday, 1.53 in puts. 42% of all the options being done were bullish in nature. From a bull standpoint, going into this upcoming week, you see a consensus for it to be above 20 for the most part, so 20 to 2050. Bears are anticipating for it to break down to between that $17.50 and $18 range. These are all the transactions, like I said, that did occur on the dark pool, so a lot of big ones. So 1.24 million, a couple 1 million, and also a $3 million transaction that was pretty much done near the end of the day. And ultimately, that seems to be the only ones above 1 million. But aside from that, though, as I've mentioned, a lot of this was attributed to either shorts returning or hedge funds buying. Aside from all of that fun stuff, though, on the actual chart itself, you did have a little bit of sketchiness that did happen on September the 2nd. And so that was because of it just piggybacking off the broader market. But luckily enough, it did bounce off of that 50-day moving average and is starting to trend higher. So going into this upcoming week, it is above that 10-day moving average, which is usually seen as a good momentum kind of moving point. So right now, you see it very hyped up. And yeah, like I said, this is a very similar scenario to June. So don't be surprised if you see 21, 22, and or potentially even higher. One thing that I do find rather interesting, though, is despite this setup, you actually don't see the bullish options represent that. So again, something to keep in mind. Stochastic RSI, because of what has happened over the last several trading days, you have it overbought. And I think that's generally nothing really wrong with that. Same in June, it was very overbought. Pretty much all of April and May, it was considered overbought. So nothing really wrong. When stocks do correct, that's usually how they do represent. But at the end of the day, if there is a negative that does come out, whether it be specific to Oscar or the broader market, this is where you could see a push lower. So no matter what, just kind of be aware of that and everything else. So let me know your thoughts on Oscar Health. Do you think that higher highs are going to be coming? Do you think that things are going to be pushing lower? What is your general thoughts on all of that? Since my last video, I did have roughly around, I think it's 4,500 shares, but I frequently do options. So unfortunately, a lot of my shares did get taken away. I have a lot of different other platforms and brokers and stuff like that. So I have roughly around 2,500 shares on those. In IBKR, the only ones I have is just me selling puts. So I think all of them are going to be expiring worthless. I have various strike prices from $10 to about $14 for the most part. And so yeah, they'll be expiring worthless, meaning I'll be getting the premiums. And that's something I'm going to be continuously doing. I love to do the option wheel with Oscar because yeah, you can get some pretty good premiums from the options. And honestly, I do feel that there's a lot of upside. So let me know your thoughts on Oscar Health and what you've been doing. One final thing, pop over to my Patreon if you're looking for some solid buy signals on stocks, options, crypto, many of which have been absolutely on point. Worthwhile to pop over there and take a look. With all that said, appreciate all of you watching.